Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to my channel. And today in this video, we are going to look at one more feature of Saloon, which is authentication. So in our last video, we looked at how we can send body data or request data through this package. And obviously then the next thing, which is a very important aspect of any API based communication, is how do we authenticate our request with the end API server. Now, this package gives us multiple ways to do the authentication. For example, if you see here, we have with token auth where it expects a token and there's a prefix by default as bearer. So those of you who have worked with Sanctum, they would know that inside Sanctum, when we log in through the API, we get a token, and in any subsequent API calls, we are expected to send a header where the key is authorization and then the value is bearer space the API token that we got when we logged in. There are other ways as well. For example, you can send username and password with the function called basic auth, which basically creates a header where this username and password is passed in an encrypted way. I think it is base 64. I'm not very sure about that, but that's how and some algorithm is used. With digest auth and with query auth are things which I haven't used, but from this particular thing, what I understand is, if we are supposed to send the API key in any particular as a query parameter, we can do that. I remember in one of my API implementation, we had such a similar thing, but then yeah, I mean it has to be a server server based communication, otherwise your API key will get exposed. However, that is not the criteria for this video. What we are going to look at is how do we use these methods, and I will specifically work on the with token auth for you to understand how things work. Now, for this, the setup that I have is one Laravel application is running on port 8000, which is basically the basic application where I have my Saloon package installed. Then there's the second package, second installation of Laravel running on port 9000. It's on my desktop, temporary code base, and I have Sanctum installed on it. I mean, obviously Laravel comes with Sanctum by default. So the idea here is that I'll create a new connector. Okay, and so this is my connector, right? Laravel connector. Or maybe I'll create one more connector which will be for the authenticated users, and I'll use the Laravel connector to make an API call to get the token back. So let's get started, and I hope you will be more clear about what I'm trying to do. So I have the instance of the connector, but obviously I'll need one more request class which will be used to log in the user. So let's do that. So I executed this command, which is php artisan saloon request Laravel API login user, where Laravel API is defining the integration that we are going to work on, and the login user is obviously the request. So now I have a request class, and this request class will be a post request. So I'll just change that. And because it's a post request, I'll also need to implement the has body interface. And with that, we will need certain methods which are required by the interface. So what we will do is we will use a trait called has JSON body. All right, so with this done, we are now ready to make an API call for requesting the token. But obviously I'll just change the URL so that we are hitting this thing. So the connector connects to localhost 9000/API, and the URL over here needs to be /token/create. So this is something which we will need to create inside our second app, which is running on localhost port 9000. So this is the API on our Sanctum application. The API route is token/create. I'm getting the request class injected over here. Then I have user equals find. Now this is obviously not the correct way of logging in a user, but just as an example, what I'm doing is I'm taking the user ID from the request and I am finding that user, and then I'm creating a token. And to create the token, obviously we need a token name, and so that is also something which I am getting from the request object. And just to tell you what my database looks like, I have an SQLite database and artisan tinker. Over here, if I do user all, you will see that I have two users in here. User ID 1, which is my own user with a password, and the second one is John Doe. Now, if this is what we have, ideally, from our main application on this particular page, we should be able to make a post request and get our login token, right? We should be. So let's see if we are able to get that. So now what do we have in here? I'm creating an instance of the login user request. This is the request class. Okay. And because we have the has JSON body, we get this method that we can run on the request. We do a body dot add with the token name and the user ID. So with this in place, ideally we should be able to get a response. Let's refresh and see. I do get that, and this is my access token. Now I think I made a small mistake, which is the code over here. Instead of token, I'll have to do token and then plain text token. And with this change in place, I think now if I come over here, refresh, undefined property. Oh, I made a typo over here. PLAIN. Okay. And now if things are correct, I get this third token over here. Now this is for user ID 1. And if I change it to, okay, this is my test application and this is my other application, user ID 2. And now if I refresh, or I'll get a fourth token over here, but this is specifically for user ID 2, which in our database was John Doe. This is fine, we are getting the token, but then how do we send it through the header? So let's look at that. For us to send the connector, I'll show you how the documentation of Saloon allows you to do that. Basically, we can mention that all my requests will have this thing over here, which is with auth token. This is inside the connector, right? This is one way where basically I'm creating an instance of the connector and I am running I'm executing the method with auth token to it. The other one is something which I can do, like I can send it to the constructor, and that is what I am going to show you. Right. This is what I was talking about. So this is our connector. There's the base URL which we are resolving, and then we have the constructor, and in the constructor we are passing the token. Right. So why don't we do that and see how things work? So I'll go to my Visual Studio Code. So now if you see, I have one more connector inside the Laravel API integration, right? Now, obviously, the base URL over here will be same as this. So I'll just copy that from here and paste it. And then it comes down to the only other configuration, which is obviously I don't need this, but what I need is the constructor and the ability to say that this is what will go in the header. So I have this function where this is the string that I'm expecting, and I assign that value to our with token auth method. All right. So with this in place, what are some of the changes that are rather what is the next step to get the user profile? For example, we have this slash user, right, which we can request for. So first thing, let's create one more request. So this is one request that I had. I will create the request with the name user profile. It's a GET request, that's fine. And the API that we will be calling is slash user. So that's about it. Now, let's understand how we can make a call which is to the authenticated user. We'll have a new connector. This time it will be Laravel Auth connector, and the response, this is what we will send to this particular connector, because in the constructor we are expecting that token as a string, right? Once we have this token being sent and the connector instance is ready, we can make a request to the user profile. So with this in place, ideally, if our code is not wrong, we should be able to get the user. So can you see, this is the token. This token was sent to the next API call, and we got John Doe. So similarly, if I this is my Saloon code, if I change the user ID over here, and now if I refresh, can you see I'm getting the first user? So basically this means that now I am able to make API calls with an authentication header, as the the documentation says. So if you are making an API call to an authenticated URL, something like Sanctum has been implemented there, this is the perfect way to use Saloon and its built-in authentication feature to get the communication done. So yeah, that's about it, guys. That's how we do authentication headers using using Saloon, not Sanctum, right? Let me know what are your thoughts about this entire feature and this package. Now you can chat with me on the comments or even on Discord. I have the link in my description, so you can be there, and I'm quite active over here. And yeah, if you like this video, do click on the thumbs up icon and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.